All right. Hi, this is Professor Don Patterson, and we are at the very end of a coding exercise trying to create Othello as a web application. If all goes well, this will be our very last video for coding up our demonstration version. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to put just a little bit of final polish on this app. What that means is we're going to give it a little timer that shows people who are playing the game how much time has elapsed, kind of keep the game moving a little bit. We are going to clean up one bug, and we're going to try and make the loading process just a little bit cleaner. So let's start, and let's work on that timer for starters. To do that, we're going to have to coordinate a couple things. One of the things is the display that we're going to show the user on the client side. We're going to need to change the HTML. We're going to need to change the client code in main.js, and we'll need to change a little bit of code in server.js. So let's actually go in reverse order. Let's start with server.js, work on the server side changes so that every time we send the client an update about the game, we're going to tell them when this move started so that the client can show a countdown clock. All right, let's go to Visual Studio Code and let's bring up server.js. What we're looking for is we're looking for right here, happen to be right here, we are in the play token handler in server.js. This is the code that happens when a user clicks on the client, plays a token, the message gets sent to the server, and this is where the server handles it. Way down here, as we're processing all the different aspects of the game, making sure that it's the right player who played, sending them back information about the success of the play, and then executing the flipping of the tokens and the calculating of the legal moves, the last thing that we're going to do down here is we're going to set up part of the game state to be the last time a legal game was made. So let's just create a little date object here that's going to help us know what time it is in the game. And then we're going to set the game.lastMove time equal to d.getTime. Now this is a field that was already in our data structure. We set it for the first time when we created the game, but now when the game is created, and after every play, the last move time will be reset to the current time. Okay, that's fine. That's helpful. Now let's create a place in the HTML where the user can see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a progress bar. Now we're not going to have any consequences if the user runs out of time. It's just to sort of visually put a little pressure on the user to keep the game going. So we're going to go into game.html. And what I'm going to do is put a progress bar at the top of the game board. Just one option you could possibly use, my bad graphic design option. All right, so we're going to come down into HTML and game.html. We're going to go right above the game board, and we're going to add the progress bar using the Bootstrap progress bar structure right on top. So we will call it class equals progress. Be a little place where we can put our progress bar and the closing div there below it. Just take a look at that for a sec. Okay, looks all right. And then we're going to create a div that we're going to access from within our code, and we're going to give it an ID of elapsed. And that's just going to be so that we can get access to it from our JavaScript. Let's see, within that div, we're going to actually, for this to work as a progress bar, it needs to be the progress bar. So the div is going to have, it's going to still be called ID collapse, but we're going to give it a bunch of classes that will get this div styled as a progress bar. So these are all things you can look up in Bootstrap that style it in different ways, but we're going to have an animated green progress bar. So we'll use progress bar, which is the general class for Bootstrap. And then we'll add progress bar animated, and that will get the stripes rolling on it. Or I guess not, that won't do it. What will get the stripes on it is progress bar stripes, striped. And then we'll continue adding classes. We're going to add one that makes it green, which is background success. So we'll use the green success color. And that's it for classes that will make it the progress bar. And then we'll give it a role for the purposes of like accessibility. And we're going to say it is a progress bar. Just all run together like that. We're going to give it a style. This is how we set how wide it is. That's going to be equal to width equals 0%. So it's going to start at 0%. Now notice we're using an inline style to control the size of the progress bar. It's unusual to see that, but that's the way it works in Bootstrap. Put a semicolon at the end of that, and then we'll use the text-to-speech reader accessibility features to say what the value is now, and that's equal to 0, and then what the value minimum is, aria value minimum, and that's going to be equal to 0, and we will have the aria value max equal to 100, and then that will be everything, and then we have the closed div, just one of them. Save that, make sure it looks okay. Put on one line, save it, there we go. All right, I like the way that looks, at least in the HTML. Give it a sec, just look at it, make sure I didn't make any errors. Okay, I'm going to save that. All right, so now we have our server telling us when the last move started. We have a place in the HTML to demonstrate how much time has elapsed. Now let's go into main.js and do the calculation and the update. In main.js, where we want to go to do this is when we are getting an update. So let's see. We're actually kind of here right now, I think. One sec. All right. Where are we? We're in the game update handler in main.js. So this is where the server sends back an update to main, and then we take that update and we update the board. So this kind of makes sense. We go through and we make sure that we have all of the correct information, make sure that we know our color, make sure we update whether we're white or black, update whether or not it's our turn or not, then go through, calculate the score and update the score, do any of our animations that we need for board pieces that are different based on what just came in from the server update, add interactivity so that you click and hover over items, and then let's see. We want to do this right before we update the sum. And what we're going to do is we're going to set a closure. We're going to use a closure, and we're going to put something on a timer so that every second that goes by, we will update our display using our little function. So actually, let's see. Let me just put a marker here so I can come back to it, because we actually need a global variable that we can work with. So I'm going to go to the top and go to my color. And since my color is kind of in the same area of the user interface, I'm just going to put something here that says interval timer. This is going to be a variable that we're going to use. Let interval timer, and it's not going to have a value, and then semicolon. That's going to be where we just where we declare it. And then let's go down to where we're going to use it again. This is the bottom of send update. And here, the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to clear whatever was present before. Oops, not interval. All right, I'm going to just check, make sure I called it the same thing. I didn't. Let's see. What did I call it? I did call it interval. That's funny. Interval timer is what I want to call it. So I just changed the name to interval timer. It's getting late. Getting a little tired. Okay. So let's go to game update. There we are. Let's go to the bottom of it. Clearing our interval timer. All right. So when we get a game update, we're going to reset our timer. That's what this does. And what we're going to reset it to is we're going to say our new interval timer is going to equal to set interval. We're going to give it a closure, which I'm going to fill out here in a second. And then we'll update it every second. All right, so whatever closure is going to happen every 1,000 milliseconds or every second. So now we need to replace closure with the function that's going to be run. All right, so let's do that. All right, we are going to need a function. So here's a function that takes our last time update. All right. And what we're going to do is we are going to put a parenthesis after that, and we'll put a parenthesis before it. And we are going to call it with the last time that was sent. So payload.game.last move time. All right. Make sure everything looks like it's closed up here. Nope. Let me get everything closed up. We're going to continue writing this function. I just want to make sure that we've got all our parentheses ironed out here. Okay, that looks all right. All right, now we're going to put the function in here that we're going to return, and this is where our closure goes. So we're going to return a function, and that function is going to look like what goes in here. All right, and the function that's going to go in here is our closure, and we need to do a bunch of work to calculate the time. So let's start with getting a new date object. And from that date object, we want to figure out how many milliseconds have elapsed since the last time that was reported from the server. So we'll call that be elapsed m for elapsed milliseconds, and that's going to equal d.getTime minus the last time that was passed in. So that'll be the difference between the current time and the time that the last move was played. Now we need to turn this into minutes and seconds so that we can display it. So we'll let our minutes be equal to, it's going to be the here, let's spell this right with a D. It's going to be the elapsed milliseconds divided by 1,000. That will give us seconds. And then if we divide that by 60, that will give us minutes. And then we want that to not be a fraction, so we're going to round it down. All right, does that look all right? I think that looks okay. Now to get seconds, we're going to do something similar. We're going to say the number of seconds, and what we want is we want the remainder. After we remove the minutes from that, we just want the remainder of what's left over. So this was going to be our elapsed minutes modulo 60 times 1,000. All right, that'll be right. Then we'll divide that by 1,000 to get seconds. And then we'll do the floor of that. And we need one more parenthesis. Okay, that gives us minutes and seconds. And now we need to know what the progress bar is going to be set to. So we'll have the progress bar go from 0 to 100 seconds because that's just easy. So the total is going to be equal to however minutes we just calculated times 60 plus however many seconds we have after that. And that'll be the total number of seconds that we just calculated. And if it's over 100, then we're just going to make it stop at 100 because our progress bar has to have a limit. Okay. Think about this for a second. All right, now we need to get a string that we're going to put into our display. So we'll say our time string is going to be equal to seconds as a string, and then we want to pad it with some zeros so that we have, because seconds, when you draw seconds, if it's 1 second, it's actually 0 1 second when you draw it out. So it's going to be, we'll use the function time string.pad start. We'll pad it with two spots, up to 2 spots with zeros, and then we'll make the time string be equal to the number of minutes we've got plus a colon plus the time string that we just calculated. All right, so that'll get something that looks like a normal, minutes and seconds kind of counter. All right, if the total is greater than 100, actually, let's just write it directly in. We'll say we're looking for the spot in our document object model, which is elapsed. So the ID elapsed. And what we're going to put in there is just HTML. If it's over 100, we're just going to write times up. And otherwise, we're going to put the time string in there. And that's all going to happen at every second we're going to do that work. All right, looks like everything looks like it's lined up here. All right, so just to reiterate, every time a move gets made, server is going to update this information and send it back to the client. Here in the client is where we process that. And then every second, using a set interval, we're first going to clear the last update. And then every second, we're going to reset our progress bar so that it goes from 0 to 100. Oh, yeah. Where I'm actually setting the progress bar here. I'm not actually setting the progress bar. So at the last thing we want to do here, let's set the progress bar. And to do that, we need to change the value of it. So we're also going to go to elapsed. Hashtag elapsed is our ID. And what we need to change is two things. We need to change in the CSS, we need to change the width. And we need to set that equal to be total plus the parentheses, because it's going to be however many seconds percent filled. And then we need to change the attribute for text-to-speech reader of aria-value now. And we're going to set that equal to just total. Right, that's actually going to change the width of the progress bar. Okay, I did some rearranging of the code in order to try and get to the bottom of it. But what the problem was actually right here, interval timer was interval time, and that was messed up. It needs to be interval timer. So anyway, I ended up with code here where we set our date, we calculate the elapsed time that's passed, we calculate the number of minutes using MathFloor, we calculate the number of seconds using the remainder in the modulo. We then calculate the total number of seconds that have elapsed based on that. And if that total is greater than 100, then we cap it at 100 because our progress bar can only go to 100. We then find our progress bar. We set the width of the progress bar using CSS, which is the way that Bootstrap does it. And we change the screen reader value to reflect the value of the progress bar. Then we calculate the string we're going to display by starting with the number of seconds, padding it with a 0. So if it's a single digit, we get 2 digits with the first one being a 0. We add the minutes to that string and put a colon in the middle. And then if it's less than 100, we go ahead and add the time string that we just created to our elapsed progress bar. If it's greater than 100, we say time's up. Let's go take a look save all that. Let's go take a look at what that looks like. Empty our cache and reload. Empty our cache and reload. Have our new folks show up. Start a game. And now you see the progress bar is moving smoothly. When it's black and it's black's turn, we go ahead and click that, and the progress bar smoothly resets and counts up again. I'm going to let it go here for a moment and speed up the video so that you can see what happens when we get to the end. Okay, and we get the time's up message there at the end. So that's decent. A couple more things I want to clean up. That initial flash when the board loads up, I want to get rid of that, and we can get rid of that simply by going to the start of our game when we create our old board at the beginning of our load here. When we first create our old board, originally we started with question marks because we didn't know how we were going to initialize our board. But now in our HTML, we're initializing our board with empty squares. So we can just assume that we're starting with an empty square. And if we change all of these question marks to spaces, we should eliminate that sort of like pop at the beginning of the game when you join the room. Save that, and then we can go back and take a look at what that looks like now. That's main.js, so we can just go back and reset our cache. All right, invite someone to join us. Play, and I'm gonna hit play and watch that the board doesn't pop in the same way. It just opens up and populates. So that's much better in my opinion. The last thing I want to fix is what happens when you leave the chat room. So watch what happens when the left player quits. We get this Don left the, and this is the random name of the room that we're using that the user doesn't know anything about. So I want to change that to be Don left the chat room, like when we join. So that's in main.js, and we're just going to go find here at the end of this handler, or at the end of the player disconnected handler. And when we say, right now we say someone's name left the payload room, we're just going to make that left the chat room and put a period on it, get rid of the variable in between, and then there are still player count people in the room. So let's see, make sure you can see all that. Goes right into the string, and then we don't leave the string until we're outside the payload count there. All right. That should be everything. Like, I think that's the whole game right there. I think now the only thing left to do is to prove that this works on Heroku. So let's pull that up. I've got my two windows here. I'm going to go into my GitHub repository here that I've been following along with, and let's pull that up. Let me commit those changes. I'm going to push those right out to GitHub. Make sure it goes okay. All right, and it should be launching on Heroku. Let's give it a second for Heroku to catch up. Go back to our two clients. Okay. All right, it's working great. So that's it. That is the end of a long sequence of videos coding up Reversi or Othello as a web application. A lot of different steps, a lot of other design choices you could have made, but this is one possible outcome. Congratulations if you make it this far. Hope you're able to get the last minute tweaks that we looked at in this video, and I hope you feel very accomplished for having actually launched a small, interesting, non-trivial game on a cloud infrastructure. Thanks for playing along. I'd love to hear any comments that you have. Leave them in YouTube or otherwise get them to me. Thank you very much for your attention.